To say that I love Record of Ragnarok would be a massive understatement, the same way that you guys absolutely loved my Record of Ragnarok videos, beyond genuine belief. So today, I'm going to be making an extremely long video as a thank you to you guys for your immense support, and I'm going to be ranking every single fight of Record of Ragnarok thus far. Yeah, so sit back, relax, take your favorite snacks, because this one is going to be long. Two things before I start. Number one, spoiler warning, I'm going to be covering fights from the manga that have yet to be adapted. If you're still in anime only somehow, then consider this your only warning, so tread lightly in this video. And number two, everything that I say in this video is my opinion and my opinion only. Please, for the love of God, do not crucify me in the comments. And if anything, I want to see what you guys' rankings on these fights are in the comments, so leave a comment, bro. I'm actually very curious to see what you guys think. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the rankings, or my rankings, of Record of Ragnarok fights. So the fight that gets the label the worst fight of the series, in my humble opinion, is Thor versus Lu Bu. And yeah, this fight just didn't do it for me. The fight was very simplistic. There really wasn't much behind it narrative wise. It kind of just simply lays the foundation of how the series is going to move forward, with pretty much a fight sequence, then a flashback of one of the characters, then more fight sequences, some explanation with other characters, with like in God's side and the human side, then another backstory, and then the fight sequences to end off the final fight. This fight it kind of just was there. The backstories weren't interesting. It pretty much, for Thor and Lu Bu, it was just the same old, yes, I'm him, and there was really nothing else behind that. So yeah, the placement of this fight is definitely going to be controversial, especially considering that it is the latest round that just ended, that being Tesla versus Beelzebub being at the second worst. How do I go about saying this without getting crucified in the comment section? I believe that this fight simply it didn't do enough for me. That's the best way that I can put this. I feel like Beelzebub had easily the best backstory in the entire series, or at the very least second to someone else that I'm going to mention later. But yeah, Beelzebub had the most interesting character and story behind them coming into this fight. So I was very excited for this, and especially considering that then we got revealed that, you know, Tesla is going to be the one fighting Beelzebub. So I was even more excited. And then we finally get to see Tesla's backstory. And yeah, this was very, let me say this again, very underwhelming. It just simply didn't connect with me. It felt like it was an attempt at trying to recreate the magic of like Adam, as far as him being the father of humanity and Tesla being one of the biggest geniuses in regards to science and things of that nature. So it was kind of somewhat of an attempt at that, and it kind of failed. But the fight itself wasn't really that bad. We got Tesla's gear, which involved many aspects of science. In the peak moment of the fight, we get him ending up teleporting himself, which was extremely hype. Beelzebub with his staff of Amphibious, him, you know, pretty much being a perfect counter to Tesla's gear, because it had to do with vibrations and whatnot, so pretty much was a perfect counter. So yeah, but for the most part, this fight just lacked emotional depth for me to care enough about it compared to the other fights above this. So yeah, it was a bit disappointing, that's for sure, but it definitely wasn't nowhere near remotely as bad as Thor vs. Lu Bu. So just to make that very clear. But yeah, I do believe that the other fights are better than this one. Going slightly up a notch, we have Shiva versus Raiden. And yeah, this fight was extremely physical, which I love. This fight began with Raiden drop kicking Shiva in the face. I swear to God, when I read this panel, I legit jumped from my chair, legit flabbergasted. Especially considering that Raiden is a sumo wrestler. So to see that he began the match with just a straight up dropkick WWE style, like that legit left me speechless. I was flabbergasted. And yeah, this fight was extremely physical. Shiba, him having 4 arms, it almost like, even though he had 4 arms, in a way, there was some points in this fight I'm like, yo, she was kind of in trouble, bro. Especially since he lost one of his arms very early on in the fight. And then getting into the backstories between both Shiba and Raiden, we have Shiba who ends up having this sort of like come up with Rudra, and pretty much they beat up every single other god, and then pretty much they end up fighting each other once they're at the very top, which obviously Shiba wins, which he gets declared to be the very best, and Rudra just goes off. And then we get Raiden's backstory, and it was really, really emotional. It was very emotional seeing him struggle with his body from pretty much very early on in his life. And him having the responsibility to take care of his family, him sumo wrestling, him coming into terms with his own supernatural strength, and it was very, very compelling. So in a way that kind of gets reflected into this fight, and he pretty much for the first time ever he gets to let loose against a god. So yeah, it was very well done, this fight, for sure. Now the thing that kind of hurts it, in a way, it's not really necessarily its fault to some degree, and that is, of course, that it was very predictable who was going to win this fight. There was no way in hell Shiva was losing this. No way. I mean, the humans came with a 2-win streak coming into this. Narrative-wise, it made sense for Raiden to lose here, but for the most part, this fight was pretty much enjoyable. It's more of in the sense of how the other fights are much, much better. So, moving up the rankings, we have Buddha versus Zirofuku / Hajun. And good God almighty, this fight was a roller coaster of freaking emotions, man. Just on the record, I cannot wait to see this fight get adapted. Granted, it might not look as beautiful as this was in the manga, but I'm very interested on seeing how they will adapt certain moments. But yeah, this fight was really good. This is very, very good. This is where up these rankings we see a certain pattern here, and that is how the backstories link almost perfectly with the fight at hand. And Buddha's backstory is very, very interesting and also perfectly links with Zirofuku. We kind of see how Buddha pretty much decides to fight back against what kind of has been destined for him, and him going on his own path. And in that path, he encounters Zirofuku as he takes away the misfortune of the humans, and he pretty much then wallows in misery, as we quickly saw how pretty much the humans ended up going back to depravity and hedonism, pretty much what is human nature. So he gets upset and just gets angry. Buddha ends up coming across Zirofuku in his path. Zirofuku's like, yo, what are you, like, why, what, like, how are they so happy? And he pretty much, Buddha responds by saying that it's just something that you, like, happiness is something that you need to look for yourself. You cannot just be given to it because it's not genuine. And pretty much that led Zirofuku to be in revenge. So pretty much in a way it perfectly matches with what's going on in the fight, as we now see that Zirofuku is pretty much trying to take Buddha's head off. And it's even more funny considering that before this fight happened, and even during the previous round with Raiden and Shiba, pretty much the 7 lucky gods who transformed into Zirofuku was pretty much showing distaste for Buddha. So it pretty much kind of foreshadows it before we even get to the fight. So it's something that I gotta appreciate. Zirofuku's misery cleaver was pretty much very interesting, and again, like I said before, I'm very interested in seeing how the hell they're going to animate that humongous ass cleaver. And then it also transitioned to a spine. So it was very weird how it kind of transitioned back and forth throughout this fight, but again, it's just showing how much misery Zirofuku has absorbed. And then there's also Buddha with his turnabout 6 realm staff, and which kind of changes on his emotions. So you can clearly see that there is a common theme throughout this fight. And this fight, again, the physicality of this fight is pretty great. The paneling in here is great. The fight sequences are just like literally had me on the edge of my seat while reading this. And when finally Zirofuku's down, maybe we might see the first match where it might not end in death. Then all of a sudden things get turned on its head as Zirofuku then transforms into Hajun. And this is where things got just straight up insane. While Buddha somewhat struggled against Zirofuku, it wasn't nowhere near to the same degree with Hajun. I mean, Hajun literally made this man eyeless, bro. Hajun came through, put pressure on Buddha. Literally, Buddha on it. You could even argue that when he was fighting Zirofuku, he honestly was on his ass. But then Hajun comes in and Uno reverses everything. Everything gets flipped on its head entirely. Him flaunting on the fact that he is just straight up mocking Buddha. It was just straight up insane how things flipped that fast. And then to cap all this fight up, pretty much Buddha ends up using Zirofuku's weapon and pretty much does a Voland. So pretty much we were like, oh wait, Buddha's a god, so Voland is not going to be used this time around. But yeah, Voland gets used in this round with Zirofuku's weapon that he left behind, and he pretty much is able to defeat Hajun. And it was easily one of the most satisfying fights of the series, as far as seeing Hajun being an absolute dickhead. But hey, he won a lot of people over in the community with his absolute chat energy, I will say that. But yeah, this fight was incredible. It tied everything nicely with the themes as far as why Zirofuku ended up being the way that he was, and why Hajun ended up being defeated. Everything just tied up very, very nicely. Also, Jesus was in the stands. That's immediate W. What can I say? Next up, we have King Shi Huang versus Hades. And man, this fight really takes things up to another level. Definitely deserved to be in this place. 100%. Just absolutely incredible physicality between these two. Just absolute bonkers. From Qi Shi Huang's nail guards and his martial artist type of style of fighting, freaking Hades with him fusing his weapon, his staff, with the trident of Poseidon to have this some sort of fusion between the two. Just absolute, like, the physicality in this fight was just unbelievably good. Like, these two were straight up boxing. Like, we see like the damage being reverted back because of King Shi Huang. Like, just straight up, it was legit. This fight had me on the edge of my seat throughout the whole thing. And this is not even taking into account the flashbacks surrounding these two fighters, because the theme of this fight is of course being who is the better emperor, who is the better leader. We see Qin Shi Huang being the biggest emperor of all of China, and then we have Hades being the leader of the underworld. Like, we just see these two head to head. With Hades' backstory, we get to see more about his relationship with Poseidon and the rest of his siblings. We also even get to reveal that Adamas, who we thought he was dead from Poseidon's backstory, was alive this whole time. Just so many layers to Hades' backstory that is genuinely shocking to me how amazingly well crafted it was. And this why Hades' backstory genuinely might be one of the best of the entire series as a whole, because it genuinely recontextualized so many things. And also Beelzebub played a factor into this backstory also. Like, so many things was layered on top of each other with Hades that it was incredible. And to see it reflected onto this fight was absolutely phenomenal, dude. Just absolutely incredible. King Shi Huang's backstory was also heartfelt and emotional. Also, him taking the burden of the people who hated him and whatnot, and seeing how much he suffered and took that on himself. And even his relationship with Chunjian, basically his live-in caretaker and bodyguard, seeing literally the relationship, how they formed a bond together, almost what feels like a familiar bond, like a son-mother type bond, and then seeing her sacrifice her own life. Genuinely, like, everything about this fight, the backstories, the physicality, the conclusion, and how everything tied up together was just straight up just incredible. Just genuinely, this was a W. However, the next fights were so difficult to rank from this point onward that it sucked for me, not gonna lie. But yeah, this fight was absolutely incredible. And looking back on it, genuinely, I didn't appreciate it much on my first time reading, but I definitely appreciate it a lot more now. That's for sure. So we have finally reached the top 3 spots. And like I said, this was a lot harder for me to organize. This was tough. But for number 3, we got Sasaki Kojiro versus Poseidon. And genuinely, this fight, honestly, if it wasn't for the next 2 fights above this one undoubtedly would have taken the cake. And if anything, I'm torn because I genuinely feel like the conclusion to this fight hit me a lot harder than the 2 fights above, which is a controversial take, definitely, but genuinely, this fight was so well put together. It's actually goddamn near scary how we got Adam versus Zeus and then this fight back to back. So we have Sasaki Kojiro, which his tagline or his nickname in the series, the world's greatest loser. Genuinely, I feel like there really could have been a better person to fight Poseidon than a guy like Kojiro, because his humbleness, his demeanor, his energy matched Poseidon's, his cockiness, his just, obviously him being a god and whatnot, him being prideful to an insane degree. Obviously, it was like bread and butter. It was so well put together. And then we have him struggling with Poseidon, him trying to find ways to try to fight against Poseidon, him literally dying at the beginning of the match 17 times in his head. And then genuinely, the fight was crafted in a way that almost Kojiro was meant to lose. He was meant to lose here. And of course, this is the meme that Poseidon didn't once use one of his water attacks, which, God knows why that wasn't the case. Sasaki Kojiro was meant to lose this fight, and yet the way that it was put together had him win in a way that was so believable. Pretty much him using everything that he experienced throughout most of his life, which is his backstory, him going through so much, him losing, even though he easily could have won if he actually gave a damn against the other fighters that he have consumed their skills. Pretty much he just continued going forward even higher. He went to even insane heights and he kept losing. It was as if he wanted to lose just for him to gain more. And to see all of his experience accumulate to this fight was just absolutely phenomenal. And then we have on the flip side where we have Poseidon, who so deep into the idea of being a god that him genuinely he put away everyone else genuinely just for the sake of him saying gods don't scheme, gods don't do that. He was so into the idea of being a god to the point where it almost came to his own detriment in a way. He put aside everyone, which obviously gods are prideful, but to the degree that Poseidon was, it was damn near He was damn near unhealthy. And again, it matched perfectly with a guy like Kojiro, and the personality between those two soared highly when they actually were clashing with each other. Where how Sasaki Kojiro was yeah, bro, hey, if a god being is this empty and lonely, bro, I don't want to be you, bro. And that genuinely offended Poseidon, and that type of stuff genuinely was so good. It was so good reading it. Genuinely, like I said, this fight was just unbelievably well done, that it's damn near scary how great fights we had back to back to back, man. Genuinely. And then of course, Sasaki Kojiro being the first human winner of Ragnarok, just that feeling, that moment, everything about that moment was just absolutely satisfying to see. And again, someone like Poseidon, who was genuinely a dickhead literally throughout his entire appearance in the series, obviously minus the backstories with Hades, but for the most part he was being a dickhead, and to see him fall this hard against a guy like Sasaki Kojiro was just absolutely satisfying in a way that genuinely to this day, this might honestly be the biggest W of the series in my humble opinion. So yeah, this fight genuinely, even though the next two fights are much better structured and things of that nature, this fight has a very, very special place in my heart, genuinely. Now, I'm going to announce the second best fight, which of course, I'm pretty sure you can put two together as soon as I announce that one. You guys will know the number one. Alright, so number two, the second best fight in my opinion of Record of Ragnarok. Adam versus Zeus. And like I said, this top 3 was very difficult for me. This was really difficult for me. The number 1 and the best is Jack versus Hercules, but I'm going to leave that off for now. And let's focus on Adam versus Zeus. And yeah, this is a underdog fight that just absolutely just hit. It just hit. That's what it is. This fight, just the way that it appeals to your emotions, honestly, is what gave the edge to this fight more than Sasaki Kojiro versus Poseidon for me. That is what pretty much set it apart, because honestly, Sasaki Kojiro versus Poseidon was going to be my number 2. But here's the thing. Zeus's backstory is the weakest possibly of the entire series, in my opinion. His backstory, literally, his whole purpose was to introduce his freaking time transcending fist move just for it to get countered against Adam. Like, literally, his backstory was just for Adam to be freaking moved higher, if that makes sense. And yet, the way that Adam and Zeus pretty much worked together in this fight literally was done in a way that, honestly, it's no reason why this fight, it's a lot of people's favorites of the entire series. It's no wonder. And it will forever be my frustration why the anime adaptation fumbled this fight to such an unbelievable degree. But not talking about the anime here. Adam, him being the father of all of humanity, him having this parental role pretty much in all of humanity as a whole, him absolutely throwing hands with Zeus was so unbelievably satisfying. It genuinely is insane to me how see a guy like Adam, so small compared to Zeus, who literally looks like he took fucking 100,000 steroids freaking box, and it looked as if Adam had a chance. Because if Zeus were to fight anyone else, Zeus would have washed. Like, genuinely. Literally, Adam was the only individual that gave Zeus a challenge, which is even crazy to think about. That's how strong Adam truly was. And man, like, unbelievable. And again, Adam's backstory also wasn't the strongest either. It's just him introduced. It was literally his backstory just introduced Eve into the fray of things. Really, we didn't get much from him, obviously, backstory wise, except, you know, how he's in the Garden of Eden and having a different take on, you know, the first sin of mankind. But the fight itself was just, the physicality of this fight just was so unbelievably good that it managed to outperform anything else from the lower ranks. Genuinely, this fight was that good. And again, honestly, if this fight is your favorite, then goddamn, I cannot really blame you for that. Just absolutely amazing throughout this whole thing. Just top to bottom, great. But the flashbacks, or backstories I guess, is what hindered it, which is why Jack versus Hercules is number 1. Just, oh man, Jack's backstory, honestly, obviously we do not know Jack's actual reason as to why he was a murderer, why he did on his murder spree, obviously in real life. We don't know, but the backstory here genuinely feels so natural, is almost goddamn uncanny. That is how good this is. Obviously, minus him, you know, looking at people's colors that represent emotions. Beyond that, this honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if somehow, some way, technology or type shit, we get to see Jack the Ripper's actual motive, and it's because some bullshit like this. Honestly, it wouldn't really surprise me, because that's how natural this felt. I swear to God. And then Hercules, him being the personification of pretty much good. Him being good, Jack being pretty much humanity's evil, just represented. It's like they're the perfect antitheses for each other. The physicality of this fight is different than the other ones, because the city pretty much is a whole weapon. The city of London is a whole weapon on Jack's favor. So pretty much we get so much versatility in this fight. We see high IQ moves from both. We see high IQ plays that genuinely you don't see that anywhere else on the entire catalog of fights of the series. And the way that the backstories pretty much heighten the characters of both Jack and Hercules, the fight itself just shined ever so brightly. And then the conclusion of it, like I said, even though Sasaki Kojiro's first win personally hit me harder, god damn, the conclusion to this fight genuinely was better written, and I have no problem admitting that this fight genuinely from top to bottom was the most well-written fight of the entire series. Even though Sasaki Kojiro is the one that, you know, my heart, you know, feels for, and Adam vs. Zeus, the physicality of it was great. This fight pretty much matches those two things together so well that genuinely, this fight, in my opinion, is the best fight of the entire series. This fight is the one. This is the fight that genuinely, in my opinion, if you want someone to know what makes Record of Ragnarok special, this is the fight that you point at. This is the fight that you say, this is why I love this series. And yeah, so here, that is my rankings of Record of Ragnarok fights thus far in the series. Us being halfway kinda into the series, I'm very interested how the series is going to move forward. We do not know what the next participant is going to be, at the very least at the time of recording this video, and maybe by the time this gets uploaded, maybe we might know who the next participants are going to be. But regardless, I'm very curious to see how the series is going to be able to maintain the hype the series has gotten thus far, because as a whole, every single fight of the series had at least something that I could appreciate to some degree. The hype around, especially with the fights here at the best of the best, genuinely are incredible. So I'm very curious to see how will the fights moving forward are going to match the level of hype. And honestly, with characters like Sogo, Freaky, Nostradamus, Gintoki, I'm very excited to see how the season is going to move forward. That's for sure. So again, comment down below what are you guys' rankings for Record of Ragnarok fights so far in the story. Also, what are you guys' predictions for the story up next? What do you think is how the story is going to progress moving forward? Are we going to see even more characters? We don't know. This story could genuinely go so many different routes. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, thank you guys so very much for watching this video. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the day wherever you are, and see you guys in the next one.